Hi, I'm Teresa Coenen with Stitch and Tree Quilts, and this is month 3 of our COVID Friends Tribute Quilt. This month we'll be going over 5 different blocks, and we're going to begin with block number 7, Mask Up, as you can see here. Let's take a look at the pattern. On page 1 of our mask up pattern, I include the instructions for how to make the cuts for the blocks and something that I've written about the masks that we're wearing in America during the COVID pandemic. Page 2 includes the instructions, and page 3 includes a place for you to write your own personal reflection as you construct your quilt. Let's take a look at some fabric choices. I'm constructing my quilt in 4 different colorways. What I have here for you to see are my bright blenders and basics, my deep and rich blenders and basics, and my bright batiks with a black background. Today for our presentation, I'll be showing you how I'm using my deep and rich batiks with a light background. The pattern itself calls for 2 different fabrics. And on the pattern, it calls for fabric 1 and fabric 2. On the pattern, fabric 1 is purple, fabric 2 is pink. It's kind of hard to see the difference of those 2 colors, but you'll just follow that fabric 1 and fabric 2. On fabric 1, the only fabric you're cutting for that is just this large square in the center of your mask. So it's a perfect place if you want to include a fabric that you want to fussy cut. I somewhat fussy cut that fabric there, and I did also for this one, so it looks like something's kind of bursting out from the center of that mask. Or it might also be a place where you want to include a fabric that you've already used in a mask that you've made for yourself or for others. The other fabric 2 in the actual pattern, is the fabric that will be the straps for the mask, and you want that to be something that just accentuates the fabric that you've chosen for your mask. And you also want to make sure that you have good contrast. You can see in this quilt, when you're up close, you can see I have good contrast. From a distance, the white in that lime is hard to see from the white in my background. So it's something that I really recommend that you step back and you really take a look at from a distance before you include it in your fabric. Also, you can use a directional fabric for the mask itself. When it comes time to do the bands, you have to know that if you use a directional fabric, that your half square triangles on those corners are going to be going a different direction than the fabric itself. So that's something to keep in mind as you are constructing your mask. Also, with your background fabric, if you're using a directional fabric like I did here, it will be going diagonal for your half squares on the sides, and it will be going with your direction here. So if it bothers you, then don't use a directional fabric. But for my quilt there, that's what I've chosen to do. The instructions tell me that I should be pressing to the outside towards the face mask. So in order to do that, I'll first set the seam by holding my iron in place for 5 seconds or 5 bananas. And then I will press that to the outside. I'll turn my unit over, set the seam, and press. One of the ways that I keep my units nice and square is by always pressing in the same direction. So you saw that I turned my unit over as I pressed. And that's one of the ways I make sure that I keep that unit square. And there I have my 2 units from step 1 for the mask. In step 2, it calls for me to add the triangle to the top of each of these units. And that's going to be relatively hard to do, to find those centers by just eyeballing it. So I use a pinch method. I'll take the unit and I will fold it in half and make a pinch in that unit. You could use an iron and press it if you choose to. And then I'll take the triangle and making sure I have the center of that unit, I will make a pinch. Then I'll put those 2 pinch points together and pin those in place. In this particular case, it doesn't matter whether you've got straight points on the corners or if you've engineered your corner. Either way, you have what you need. So I'll do that for both units and then run them through my machine at 1/4 inch. You can see that I have that stitched at 1/4 inch, and I went ahead and stitched all the way across because it was easier for me to get it through my machine that way. We're to press this to the outside. So once again, I'll set that seam, and then I will simply lay it over and press. Set the seam and lay it over and press. Now it's time to go ahead and trim. The pattern calls for you to use any ruler with a 90-degree angle. So in this case, I'm going to take my Marty Michelle square up tool, and I'm going to match my 90-degree angle with the corner of the triangle, and then use my rotary cutter to just cut off the excess. Now I have the unit that I need for my mask. Once again, I take the 90-degree angle of my ruler, place it flush with the 90-degree angle of the triangle, and cut off my excess. Those will create the 2 sides of the mask unit. In step 3, it tells us to stitch both of those to the mask unit and then press to the inside. In step 3, it tells you to press towards the mask. So you put the mask side, mask center face up, set that seam, and then press that towards the mask center. And do the same for the other side. Have the mask center face up, set the seam, and then press towards the mask center. We're down to the last set of instructions. On step 4, we are to take the half square triangles and stitch them to the outsides of the mask itself. Now I like to use a Marty Michelle tool. In this case, I just grabbed a flying geese tool that will allow me to engineer my corners. And by doing so, it's easy for me to lay this on my unit and have it match up perfectly with the corners on that unit. And I know that that's where I'm stitch it. If you haven't engineered your corners, they're going to slightly offset about 3/8 of an inch. But I would recommend to use that pinch method to pinch the center of your mask and the center of your triangle to find that magic center. Once you lay this on and you stitch it, it's important to go ahead and press to the outside before laying the second side on, because you can see I very easily could catch the point of the first half of the background fabric in the second part if I not have it pressed first. So it's very important to press that open first. So you can see I have this half stitched on, this half square triangle, and I will set that seam and press it to the outside. Once I've done that, I'm ready to turn it and place my second half square triangle to the remaining side. Stitch that at 1/4 inch. Set that seam and press to the outside. And my unit is complete. I always recommend to edge stitch around the outside edge if you're planning to handle these blocks quite a bit in determining which quilt they're going to go in. It's always nice to go ahead and do a little edge stitching around those edges. So that is block 7, mask up. I thank you for joining me today. If you have any questions as you're constructing your individual blocks, give me a call, send me an email, or post something on our Facebook group. All the information will be included at the end of this video. Thank you and have a blessed day.